All right, welcome to lesson 2 of the figure section. And so now that you've gone through the first lesson on figure simplification, the assignment was to make your own reference sheet, and this was important. So you're not going to be able to move on to this lesson, or at least get it approved, if you haven't done your reference sheet. The reference sheet is very, very important, and it enables you to create kind of your own mannequin. And really get familiar with the proportions of the figure. Now, you don't have to do it for both sexes, so male and female. That's up to you. That's your preference. But it's always better to do, of course, both of them, because it will give you a better understanding of both the proportions of male characters versus female characters, right? Giving you more versatility on just drawing your mannequins later. And so that's what this last lesson is about. What I want you to do in this lesson is you're going to draw 20 figure mannequins in different poses, in different perspectives. And now, so the first 10 you can do using an underdrawing and a guideline, right? So that means that you can draw the box, and we'll do one in a second, where you're going to literally encompass the space which that mannequin can sit in. And then the other 10 you'll need to do from imagination without any guidelines, right? So this will be like really, really honing in your skills. Now, it doesn't have to be from imagination. You can still look at reference, right? So if you need like inspiration for a pose, or a certain attitude of a character, again, feel free to look at reference. However, when you're going to draw them, and it will be good for you to draw them in a different perspective from the reference, you're going to try and do it without an underdrawing or any visual marks. And this is just to, again, enforce that spatial awareness. I know it's figure week, I know it's the figure section, but again, like spatial awareness, we need to learn at all times. We need to practice it at all times, and that's why these things are so important. And that's also why I created the figure simplification video, because it kind of forces you to make your own mannequin. And when you make things for yourself, you ingrain them better when studying them. Instead of copying someone else's figure, you're kind of creating your own. And look, that doesn't mean that you have to reinvent the mannequin, right? My mannequin is also based on a lot of different mannequins. And if you feel comfortable with the most simple figure mannequin, then stick to that one, right? But then really stick to it. Don't change it throughout the entire 20 of your drawings for this assignment. Really stick to it. And that's something that we're going to pay attention to as well when you submit your assignment, is that all the figure mannequins need to have the same shapes present, because that will help you understand your spatial awareness, figure proportions a lot better than when you constantly switch up between them. At a later date, when you're more experienced, you can do that at will, but at this time, I would love for you to stick to that. All right, so again, for the first 10, so let's just mark that with the first section of the assignment. Feel free to use an underdrawing or just like a simple guide for your mannequin. So for instance, we can draw a box in like a sort of a 2-point perspective. And we'll do a bit of an underside of the box as well. And then within that box, you're going to try and draw your mannequin, right? So it's up to you, like what part of the mannequin that you start with or feel most comfortable with. I feel like there's 2 ways of starting a mannequin. You either start with like the rib cage, which is the largest area of the body, or you stick to starting with the head and then build down from there. A lot of people find it easier to start with the head to figure out the proportions, like the 8 head size or the 7.5 or 7, whatever. But some people also find it easier to first start with just the body, the rib cage, all the way down to to the legs, and then attach a well-proportioned head on top of that. So it's, again, up to you. You can start with the feet if you want to, but these are like two methods that I saw genuinely work for people. So I just like to start with the head. But that's just what I like to do. So in this case, it will be a pretty small head. All right, and I'm just gonna go based off, of my figure mannequin that I like to draw. But again, you are free to, or actually you should draw the mannequin that you practiced in section 1 of this assignment. And as always, what I recommend anyone do is try to do this traditionally. So I'm probably going to end up a little bit outside of this box, given the perspective, but that's okay. Like the box is just there. Like even if you start on top of the box, it doesn't really matter. The box will still just be there to give you sort of a guideline of how your perspective should look. Right? And it's primarily important that you, in this exercise, that you train your proportional skills as well as a little bit of gesture skills. Because that's something that's all, like everything in drawing, like we're trying to solve problems, right? So it's always better to solve these problems in the most simplest form, meaning that we're trying to train our perspective skills, our figure proportion skills, as well as a little bit of our gestural skills, by manipulating these simple shapes. And we're doing that with the very basic proportional shapes, right? This makes it easier to problem solve, because if we add anatomy on top of that, or even just things like clothing design, drapery, armor, whatever, like we're adding a lot of problems to solve on top of that. So if we first can focus on just these simple figure mannequins and practice like the most essential skills on these simple mannequins, then you'll have a much stronger base to start off from when you go to designing your own characters. And for some of you that are a little bit more experienced with drawing the mannequin, you can definitely try to incorporate some manipulated shapes, right? Instead of it just being cylinders, try to manipulate the cylinder a little bit more to make it represent the arms or the legs a little bit better, instead of it just being straight cylinder. So you can taper it a little bit. You can add some simple manipulation to it to make it represent the anatomy better if you're already like a little bit more experienced with anatomy, right? So that's something that you can definitely do, and it will definitely help you as well. But again, don't like I said, don't worry too much about creating a pretty picture here. Just worry about communicating it clearly. So when you go to submit these assignments, like what we should see, we're not going to judge you on your line weight or whatever. We're just going to see and evaluate if you understand what you're drawing, right? So if it communicates clearly the perspective in which you're drawing these mannequins, right? That's going to be important. Right, so let's do another one for this. Let's maybe do more of a little bit more of a top-down pose. Again, let's keep it a standing pose for now. So I just usually like to work my way through the body first and not worry about the limbs as much. All right. So again, just concern yourself with clarity in your lines. So that when you go to submit these mannequins, we can like really see what it is that you're trying to communicate, in which perspective you're trying to communicate it, and if your proportions are somewhat decent to the figure. And then for part 2, what I want you to do is do the exact same thing. Again, these doesn't have they don't have to be this neutral poses. You can definitely, you know, make it a little bit more dynamic if you want to. But the idea is that you like definitely start understanding a figure mannequin. So this will highly depend on your experience level. If you're a really beginner, then just go for neutral standing poses in a variety of angles, you know, in a variety of perspectives. If you're a little bit more advanced, then, you know, maybe try thinking about things like like poses. You know, someone sitting, someone jumping, things like that, right? So that's something that you can definitely have fun with, but it's gonna really depend on your skill level when it comes to designing characters from imagination. So again, when you're freehanding these, it's all about creating that intuitiveness in your perspective, you know, in your thinking, and just really see if you can have a little fun with it and really consider your spatial awareness, because that's going to be the most important part of this assignment. So again, I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun with it. And see if I can just create something that feels, you know, spatially correct. And believable when I go to create it. And again, you're not always going to hit like perfect lines or even nail your perspective at all times, but like this assignment is also designed to make you kind of work with the mistakes that you're making. Like that's one of the main reasons, you know, I make these assignments the way they are, just to, you know, make you aware of that at all times in every drawing, by the way, you're going to make mistakes. And you should, right? Because you need to learn from them. So don't try to avoid making mistakes. Make them, right? And then learn from them. That's the idea of this assignment, right? For you to just have a little bit of fun with your drawings whilst still learning a lot about figure proportions and also learning to deal with mistakes. Right, let's do one more. Let's see if we can start with the rib cage first now. Kind of see where that takes us. And again, don't worry about speed in this assignment. Like, speed shouldn't matter at all. Like, no one cares how fast you do these. Seriously. All we care about is that you learn to communicate your designs properly and with intention, because that's what's going to make you a great artist. Whether you're doing illustration, concept art, anything, basically. Anything and everything, just try to communicate it to the best of your abilities, but don't worry about speed. Like, I feel I need to stress that a lot. And don't get me wrong, I used to fall into that trap like a lot myself. Like, I always wanted to rush my drawings every time. But I quickly figured out that it didn't get me, it never got me to the results I wanted, like, ever. And the main reason, of course, is that just because you're, you know, and this is different for everyone. But if you're rushing your designs or your drawings, you're also rushing your decision making. And when you rush your decision making, like no good will come from it. That's just what I realized, is that it doesn't do you any good. And I think that's something that you'll also need to accept when you're doing an assignment like this. Like, everyone's different when it comes to decision making. And you kind of need to find your own tempo. I think that's the main thing you should strive for. This head feels too small, so let's make it a little bigger. Again, work with the mistakes that you're making. It doesn't really matter that you're making them. Just think about clarity. In your designs. All right, so that's it for this lesson of the course. Again, the first 10 you can use any kind of underdrawing that you want to in pencil, whatever. The second 10 need to be just straight onto the paper, and just really thinking about how you're going to communicate your perspective and your figure proportions in that perspective, but try to do it without an underdrawing. All right, have fun, everyone.